Okay, welcome to our fifth Whiteboard Wednesday. It's done on Monday morning after a good win, which is always a great thing, and actually a bit of a time for reflection. I reckon we've had 3 interesting weeks in the life of the Melbourne Footy Club, and which gives me, when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I thought I'd focus a little bit more on some of the, I suppose, more the philosophical aspects of being a leader in an organisation, in my case, the CEO of a football club, but things which I think transcend most organisations, also most businesses, particularly as they're going through challenging phases, whether it's business pressures, whether it's the growth of the organisation, or in our case, just the week-to-week process of trying to win a game of footy. What I'm going to talk about is what I describe as 5 truisms, and a truism is just simply something which is so obvious, if you like, that it should in many ways be taken for granted. But they're 5 little notions that at some stage in the last, I can't even remember when, whether it's something I read or something I heard someone talking about at some stage, but whatever it inclined me to write it down on a bit of paper, and it's become not a mantra, but certainly something that I remind myself of quite regularly. So I'll speak to each of these things, and hopefully it's a little bit different from what I've done previously. I'm not going to be talking so much about frameworks, more about just more the philosophy of being a leader within an organisation and the challenges which come with it. As a notion, I really try to focus on what I call authentic leadership, which is there's a terrific book written by a fellow by the name of Bill George on authentic leadership, and really what the focus of it was trying to move away from this sort of historical notion or traditional notion that leaders in fact had to be these charismatic personalities, and the reality of it is you have to always be able to lead in a way which is very consistent with your own personality, because the people see through you very quickly if you can't maintain anything which is authentic with just your style and your way, and so much of that is not so much driven by the issue of the moment, but just by the way you are and the way that you actually operate. And the pleasing thing and the good thing for all of that is that people can now assume really strong leadership roles in organisations who over time might not necessarily been described as natural leaders, and I think that's even the case with players, where in the past you had to be seen as this big, strong, brave individual to be a captain of an AFL club, where I think what we're finding now is that leadership is measured over so many different areas and values that it creates an opportunity for a lot of people to really impact on, as both captains but also members of player leadership groups. So the very first of the truisms I'm going to talk about is just simply this. It's this notion of 1, leadership is hard. Again, it's a truism. For me, leadership is hard. 1, where and how? We get beaten by 10 goals, 15 goals. Our club is disappointed, obviously. The coach is disappointed, the CEO is disappointed, the president's disappointed, there's disappointment all around you. We can all find ourselves getting caught up in that notion and that level of disappointment. But quite clearly we have to find something within our systems which means that we can actually put behind what's just happened and give people a confidence and a direction as to which way we're going to go from this point onwards. So that's dealing with whatever the issue there was and taking responsibility for whatever has to happen going forward. And often that means you've got to find something within your system and from within yourself which enables you to really step up at that particular time. So leadership is hard. And a lot of people like the notion of leadership and they like the idea of being a leader. But the reality of it is that every day of your life you're going to be tested in some shape or form. And that test is going to come often at a personal level where you're actually questioned, in regard to sometimes at quite at a personal level, whether your integrity comes into question or your values come into question or your intellect comes into question. There's a lot of noise in and around leaders, particularly in AFL football, obviously, where we've got this massive media attention. And often the direction you're trying or seeking to take the club is questioned. And so you have to always be able to assess within your own mind just where you sit at any particular stage, but also from time to time recognise that you might not have got it exactly right all the time. So that's the first of the truisms, that leadership is testing, it is hard, it is something you've got to be prepared to take responsibility and often have to find something which within your system, and that's where maturity becomes very, very important. The second of the truisms is this: change is different. Whenever you're looking to establish and develop a new order in any sort of organisation which requires change, the very first thing that people are going to look at is how that change affects them. You can't help but to get and elicit some selfish behaviours during that period of time, particularly when, in trying to establish that change, people won't necessarily have the same understanding of the bigger picture that you have as you try to elicit and create that change. And that often leads to this selfishness in regard to people's behaviours, of which is often a great challenge. And in this case, you're sometimes forced with a decision whether you can change the man or change the man. Can the person change enough in themselves to be part of whatever the new order is, or do you in fact have to make some tough decisions and move that person on? And so change is a critical part, obviously, of creating a new direction or a new strategy or a new way of being. But always understand that people are going to personalise it at some particular stage. And that's where it's very important within any organisation, as you're looking to create change, is to build a narrative, build a storyline in and around what you're trying to do. And that then becomes a reference point of which people can say, I understand why this change is happening because it's at least consistent with the direction that the club is seeking to take or the organisation is seeking to take. And that becomes a very, very important component of that notion, that people get confidence from the consistency, and then therefore a belief over time that what you're actually doing is at least consistent with the direction you're taking.